Time always flows forward, a second at a time. For some reason, a man named Rudolph Fentz never reached this figure. See also, a strange man in an alternate reality arrival in Japan on a hot summer night in June 1950, something tipped the immutable rules of our universe for a brief moment, sending a man through time and sealing his fate in the process. His name became famous with paranormal investigators, and would highlight incident as a sore thumb amid unresolved cases of the NYPD. An hour before midnight, a man just appeared out of nowhere at an intersection near Times Square in New York City. He assumed a confused position in the middle of the street, which caught the attention of a police officer. As the officer approached the mysterious man, the light changed. This confused the man, and even more, as he hurried down the sidewalk, was hit by a taxi and died instantly. Fentz Rudolph appeared in 1950 in Times Square NY, and looked startled and confused. A crowd gathered quickly. Nobody knew the man or where he came from, and no one could explain a sudden appearance in the middle of a busy intersection. Unfortunately, he was dead and unable to answer any questions. His appearance was strange, even for New York. He was well dressed, but his clothes were severely out of fashion: buttoned shoes, plaid pants, a button coat and a hat. He would have fit properly, if he had lived a century earlier. And judging by the contents of his pockets, it could have been. Man dressed in clothes of the 19th century was hit by a car and died. When an ambulance arrived, paramedics declared him dead and he was taken to the morgue. During the investigation, police found several curios and out of place in his pockets, old banknotes and coins, the last of which were dated in 1876. Interestingly, almost all of them were in perfect condition. A brass tab for a beer of 5 cents for a saloon of New York that no one had heard of it, a letter sent from Philadelphia, dated June 1876, a bill for the care of a horse and carriage washing, written by a barn on Lexington Avenue, and a handful of cards belonging to a Rudolph Fentz. These tracks intrigued Captain Hubert Fife Ream of the Office of Missing Persons, and charge of the investigation were made. Unbeknownst to him, his efforts only deepened the mystery. First, there were no records of a given Fentz Rudolph. There were no fingerprints, no identification, no missing person report. There was a Fifth Avenue address on the cards that were in the pockets of the man, but it was the address of a store whose owner had never heard of anyone named Fentz. Details of the case began to circulate, and people expressed their belief that Rudolph Fentz was actually a time traveler who was in some way transported from his time until the mid-20th century. Was Rudolph Fentz a time traveler? Understandably, Captain Ream could not conclude its investigation mentioning time travel. He continued to investigate until his efforts led to his first breakthrough. He heard the widow of a certain Rudolph Fentz Jr. who lived in Florida. She told him Ream Fentz Jr. had died 5 years earlier, but she was able to remember a strange event. As it turned out, his father, Rudolph Fentz Sr., had mysteriously disappeared decades earlier, at the age of 29. The last time his family had seen him was when he went for a walk, but never returned. Despite their best efforts, they could not find any trace that would lead to him. This information determined to Captain Ream to search through any obsolete record of missing persons. We can imagine his surprise when he learned that a man named Rudolph Fentz actually had disappeared since 1876. The description of the person of 74 years of age matched to the alleged time traveler. There was nothing more that Captain Ream could do, without seeming like a madman full against his colleagues. He never officially recorded their findings, and the case of Rudolph Fentz is still considered unsolved.